lands that we're on, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge all people with a lived experience as we walk together towards a world in which people with mental illness are valued and treated as equals. Now, just a little bit of a housekeeping. After our lovely speaker is going to share some insights with us, if you'd like to pose a question and you think of something while Esther's speaking, please jot it down in the chat. That is the only way we're going to be able to gather your questions. And any comments. It's been lovely to see people and see their comments and their reflections that's been happening as we've been talking through the week. It'd also be great, I think you will see Louise putting it down there, is to tell us where you're coming from. We've had people from all around Australia, and I'd love to see and know where you're all coming from today. So it's great to have you with us. I'd like to introduce you to Esther Pavel-Wood. She's sitting in a lovely part of the country, probably more exuberant than me. I'm going to read her bio because I think it's pretty cool. So I hope you don't mind that. But she studied classical violin at the Conservatorium High School before becoming a lawyer at Linklaters and Alliance in Paris. Over the years, she has worked in a number of areas, including fashion, styling, design, and mental health. She works in the disability policy area. She started the charity Mostly Mad Music in 2017, running the highly successful In Harmony program in 2018 and 2019. In the Harmony program, it took beautiful music from concert halls to populations of people experiencing mental illness and homelessness. As an organisation, Mostly Mad Music promotes and advocates for better mental health for everyone, and their work explores the relationship between mental health and music, as well as more general mental health and wellness topics. They run a lot of events, they create a lot of content, and they raise great awareness about mental health. Welcome, Esther. You want to take yourself off mute?
So taking myself off mute. Thank you, Kathy, so much for such a lovely introduction.
Before you don't get going, because I always get caught in this. We do a check-in question for those that I've been able to this week. That's right. So given the fact we're on music, I thought we could all kind of share, just you and me, about our favourite band. Now this is a hard one. So do you have one?
Well, I'm going to go the lawyer approach here and say that my music tastes depend on the mood that I'm in. And I'll be talking about that in the talk a bit more later. So yeah, it changes really depending on how I'm feeling at the time.
Okay, well listen, I'm going to put one out there, singers, and it's a band I don't know many people know, but it's a band called My Friend the Chocolate Cake. I don't know if you've heard of it, Esther. They're a Melbourne band. They started back calling Not Drowning Waving, and they've done it. I've gone for quite a few years. They're really cool. They've got pianist, the percussion, the drum, a cello, a violin, all that kind of stuff, and they're really cool and funky. So if you never have heard them, My Friend the Chocolate Cake, Google, get onto them. They're pretty cool, and they've got that kind of some tracks are just instrumental, and then some tracks with lyrics. So it's a bit of cool stuff. So I'm going to hand over to you to yarn with us about mental health and music. I'm looking forward to this, and I hope as we talk, we can get some great dialogue around this really important subject. So over to you.
Okay. So I did just want to acknowledge that it is Schizophrenia Awareness Week this week. It's also Mental Health Month, I think, in the United States at the moment. So it's a really good time to be talking about mental health, to be talking about social connection, and to be talking about how music, I guess, can play a role in both of those things. So you did give me a brief kind of summary, or a brief summary about what we do as an organisation. And we do two main things. We do the events that you already mentioned, which are really about facilitating a diverse population of people to kind of come together and enjoy music. Music has this wonderful softening effect on people. It kind of breaks down barriers. Everybody is equal. So that's a really, really nice way to bring people together and to share an experience. And the other thing that we do, which is something that stems more from my personal experience, but also from talking to the now almost 16,000 people that we have following us on our various social media platforms, is looking at the ways that you can actually use music to prevent mental health issues, to manage mental health issues once they kind of arise at a maintenance and at an acute level, and also how to incorporate music into your everyday life to ensure that you are as strong and resilient and relaxed and positive as possible, so that you then are better equipped to deal with any mental health issues should they arise further down the track. So they're the kind of the two main streams that we do, the live events and then the talking about the relationship between mental health and music. I did want to also highlight the social connection issue because that is the theme of this particular week. And it's been interesting for me because I've even felt in the last couple of weeks, 2 months, that the social isolation has started to have an impact. And I didn't think I would be the kind of person that would be affected by that. But the little connections that you have, saying hello, there are mosquitoes here because we're in the country. So if you see me hitting my face, that's what's going on. But the little connections you have with people when you catch the bus and you see the same bus driver, you see, you know, the same guy down the street with a dog that you pat, you get your coffee at the same place. All those little connections have been taken away from us. And it was a really kind of compelling reminder to me that there are people who live without those things all the time because of the nature of the mental illness that they have. And that's probably something that a lot of people who are out of the sector of schizophrenia particularly don't know, which is that there is a lot of social withdrawal that goes on with having the mental illness. And we know that social connection is really important for mental health. We know that it decreases loneliness, that it decreases risk of physical illness as well as mental illness, that it improves your quality of life, increases your longevity of life. So all of those things not being available to you because you have a mental illness which as a symptom tends to make you withdraw from contact with people, I think it's something that we should all reflect about, having kind of gone through this period that we've just gone through. So in terms of how music can actually help connect people, if you think about the role that music has played from not just today or this year or last year, but from the dawn of time, every culture, every tribe, every possible group of people that you can imagine have used music, and they have used it in a very communal and shared way. So if you imagine the idea that before we had the ability to write things down, the way we told stories was through song and through dance. We would warn people that certain areas of bush might not be safe to go to, that certain berries were great to pick at a particular time of year. All of that was done through song, and it was a shared experience and it was communal, and that still exists pretty much any culture that you look at today, from you know, Welsh people singing together in harmony at the football to any other, you know, culture in Africa having tribal dances. It's really interesting to note that shared community of sharing music exists and has existed from kind of, you know, hundreds and thousands of millions of years ago until today. And there is actually evidence which shows that if you have a group of people listening to music together, then the enjoyment that each person feels is enhanced exponentially by the number of people in the group. You get this thing where people are emotionally in sync and emotionally connected. And that's a really, really important way to bring people in from diverse backgrounds to share that very important social connection. And that's something that music facilitates very well. So that's one of the reasons why we ran the In Harmony program in the first year, where we were targeting people who were experiencing homelessness and severe mental illness, because that was a wonderful way to bring people together and actually, you know, had social connection at the same time as enjoying that music. Just looking at my notes quickly. Yeah, so the other thing I think that's really interesting about music, and that's something that Kathy just demonstrated, she played a song that she liked because she wanted to share that with us. So music has this wonderful capacity to bring people together because you're sharing commonality of interest. And when you have something that you really like and you really want to share it with somebody else, I mean, we all have a friend probably who really annoys us because all they ever want to do is play us songs that they like over and over again. And you're like, well, I don't like the songs, thanks for sharing, but you know, I've got my own musical taste. But the reason the person is doing that is because you get pleasure from sharing something that gives you pleasure with somebody else. And that's another really important thing that music is able to do. It's really, you're able to tap into that shared experience. So when you find someone who does like your music, all of a sudden you're like, hang on a sec, this person gets me. I'm not alone. I've just connected with somebody. And it's very easy to connect with somebody who likes the same thing that you do. So music, you know, in all of the different ways in terms of bringing people together and feeling in sync, sharing a commonality of interest, breaking down boundaries. It's really wonderful for social connection. We talk a lot about alcohol being a social lubricant, but I think that music is probably a greater social lubricant, and you can do it in the middle of the day, and you can involve children and people who don't drink. So it doesn't kind of have any kind of exclusionary properties in that sense, because you don't have to be above 18 to access music, and music's often free as well. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about with, and I suppose as well, just to look at the way that music has been used throughout the whole COVID-19 experience, kind of the couch choirs, people singing from balconies, live streaming by musicians. Music has really become a force to be reckoned with during this period of isolation, because it makes people feel good and because it brings people together. So even in circumstances where we can't share that experience face to face or live, we still get a lot of pleasure sharing that experience with people virtually, to the point that if you are somebody who is very alone and cannot access services or connect with people for whatever reason, it's still possible to find a lot of pleasure and a lot of joy in listening to music by yourself. And that's because music has an emotive quality which touches you here, and it's also the person, you also resonate and connect with the person who has written that music or the person who has sung that music. You'll hear people say a lot, that song really gets me, or this band really gets me, or I feel like I know this band because, you know, they're writing songs about issues that I didn't even realize I identified with, but when I heard them sing it, it totally resonated. That's something people say a lot. So you can get a lot of pleasure listening to music by yourself because you get that very strong emotional connection to the person who has written that song. So I'm now going to move on to something that's quite different, which is looking at the different ways that music can actually be used to manage mental illness and mental health. And there are a number of different ways that we kind of talk about through the social media platforms we run and through YouTube and stuff. And I'll talk about all of them in a little bit of detail. Also, if anybody feels like they identify with any of these strategies and you use them already, then drop a comment or something and send it in, because I'd be interested to know. So the first one is music that distracts. The second is music that relaxes. The third is music that lifts. The fourth is music that motivates. And the fifth is music that blocks. And I'll talk about how to use each of those in the context of mental health. So if you imagine that and I think across the spectrum of mental illnesses, when you're experiencing something which is unpleasant or frightening, you tend to get anxious about the way that you're feeling, which then increases the intensity of that negative experience. So if you can use music as a way of actually distracting yourself from focusing on what you're feeling, whether it's a physical sensation or a mental sensation, and use that music to actually kind of draw yourself away from focusing on what's going on in your head, you often find that the levels of anxiety that you have can go down quite substantially. And so one of the ways that you might do that is you might put on a song which has very catchy lyrics and repetitive lyrics. We know from evidence that if your brain has a kind of repetitive structure in a song, it tends to almost preempt what's going to come next. And so it focuses actually on those lyrics and on those harmonies as they arise. And you do exactly the opposite when you're trying to relax yourself, and I'll talk about how that works in a minute. So if you could put something on like that, and I've had a lot of feedback from people who've said this works really effectively. Obviously, it's not going to work for everybody, and it doesn't work like a pill works. You still have to kind of put a lot of effort into it. But it is a very successful way of just distracting you from the unpleasantness that you're feeling, because often there's nothing we can do about that unpleasantness. It's not going to kill us. It feels horrible, but it's probably going to last a little while. So distracting yourself until it goes away can be a really good option. The second one is using music to relax you. And there is definitely a lot more evidence in this space, I think, because people have looked at the relationship between music and sleep quite a lot. So we know that music, which has a very slow beat, which has harmonies which are not regular, because as soon as they're regular, your brain starts listening to them and preempting what's coming next. That actually brings your anxiety and your agitation levels down. And it also does that because it works on a principle called entrainment. Now, entrainment is something that happens to people, and it also happens to a particular kind of cockatoo, the same cockatoos that talk, weirdly enough. So entrainment is a thing, and I'm not going to demonstrate it over the actual, well, I could, I suppose, but it probably wouldn't work. It's basically, if you hear a sound outside your body, which is faster or slower than your heartbeat, then your heartbeat will rise or go down to try and match that beat that it's hearing. So if you imagine that you're anxious and your heart rate's gone up, and probably your blood pressure has gone up a little bit as well, if you put on something with a very slow beat, within about 5 minutes, your heart rate actually slows down. And that's without you doing anything at all. So that's kind of this wonderful magical tool that we do have at our disposal with music, if we want to either motivate ourselves by increasing our heart rate or relax ourselves by bringing our heart rate down. The third strategy I look at is pretty simple, and I'm sure everybody that's watching this has done this at some point, and that's putting yourself in a good mood by listening to music. We know as well that when you are listening to a piece of music that you like a lot, you release endorphins. So if you're feeling a bit cranky about something, you can put on your happy song, whatever that is for you, probably better than eating a piece of chocolate or having a glass of wine, and it makes you feel just as good, if not better. So that's a really basic tip, I think, that, you know, we all do automatically without even realizing it. The fourth one was using music to channel. I guess I use this technique when I'm feeling down and I don't have motivation. When you're starting to kind of go into the downward cycle, whether you've got mild depression or you're just feeling a bit overwhelmed, can't cope, if you can use music to kind of kickstart you out of that, so that if you have to get up and function, for example, and do something during the day, you can actually put on music which raises your heart rate. So that's the opposite of what we were just talking about before, which is to lower it with relaxation. And you can almost channel your way through feeling negative and lethargic and channel that into perhaps still negative, but at least active. So it kind of helps you to get through the things that you need to. And a lot of people use that technique when they go to the gym. So they might not want to exercise, but you put on the really loud music with the really fast beat, and that kind of gets you into the mood. Next thing you know, you've done your exercise and you can feel good, because that's something that was actually really good for your mental health as well. The last one I wanted to touch on is specific to schizophrenia. Well, I guess not sort of specific to schizophrenia, but would also apply to people who have trouble with rumination, obsessive compulsive thoughts, dark thoughts that they can't kind of stop from coming into their mind. And that's literally to use music to block it out. You can pick any sort of music you want. Most people tend to go for something very loud, not surprisingly, but it does actually have that blocking effect, so that you don't get as disturbed or agitated by the noise in your head if that noise is starting to agitate you. And interestingly, there were a couple of studies done in 2018 on the use of music for auditory hallucinations, and they tested one of them in the context of a psych unit and one, I think, in a community care setting. And both of those studies found that music interventions increase the ability of people who are having auditory hallucinations to connect with people socially and improve quality of life, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I do have the references for those that I can send to people if they're interested. I was quite surprised to read them because I didn't realize there was research in this area, but there apparently is. So the last little thing that I wanted to talk about, this is for all the policymakers and clinicians in the room, is looking at the power of music to actually reconnect people to services. So when I first ran my In Harmony program in 2018, I remember talking to some people at Wayside Chapel and at St Vincent's, and they both said, we love music because music brings people back into contact with us, and once we've got them, we can help them with all of the other things that, you know, we haven't been able to help them with. So it's a really great way to re-engage somebody who maybe doesn't want to be going to that service anymore, because people will always show up for the music class or the music therapy class because it's really enjoyable. So in terms of, getting people to re-engage or engaging with people to start with, music is a great tool to do that with. And I have used music, I would say, as an icebreaker on my social media sites, in the sense that a lot of people who don't identify as having mental health issues are happy to identify that music makes them feel good. And so once they've kind of become interested in the content to do with music, all of a sudden there seems to be this interest in mental health more generally, because people feel comfortable in a setting of music to discuss mental health. They may not feel so comfortable to discuss it in a clinical setting or in a completely, this is a mental health discussion, let's talk about mental health. But when we're talking about music, people get really excited and passionate, and they're happy to talk about their mental health in that context. So yeah, I think I raced through that. How did I go for time, Kathy? Good? All right.
You're doing fine. That's brilliant. I've just learned a whole stack and I've been writing down notes. So thank you so much. I'm wondering what got you into this in the first place. Was it your love for music to start off with? Where did the two kind of mental health and music intersect for you?
Oh, it was actually very interesting, because I'm someone who didn't listen to music for a long, long time. And that's one of the things I didn't mention in this, which is that musical memory is incredibly strong, bad and good. So music reminded me of a time in my life when I was happy, and for a long time I wasn't happy. So music was just too painful for me to listen to. This came together as I emerged from that phase, I guess, and I started to listen to music again. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, wow, music, like how have I not had this in my life for as long as I have? So I started playing around with it. And I had this moment where I was quite agitated and anxious. And I had heard somewhere that Mozart was this miracle medicine music. So I thought, I'll try some Mozart on myself and see what happens. And so I listened to this piece by Mozart for about 50 minutes, just on repeat, 6-minute piece over and over and over again. And by the time I got to the end of that, I felt a lot calmer. Maybe I would have felt calmer anyway, I don't know. But that was the beginning of me just saying there's got to be something in this music mental health thing. It seems like such a natural combination for me. And so many people think it's so important for their mental health. So I kind of started off in a bit of a weird way, but as time has gone on, it's become more and more obvious, I think, that this is an area where we could be definitely focusing a little bit more of our attention.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was reflecting on just personally for myself, and then also for my kids and family, of just the impact of music. And my girls like to have just that nice, calm meditation music that's played in the background as they're going to sleep. And I didn't know about the research around the different types of music and how it impacts in terms of calming your heart rate and all those kind of things, to ones that lift up. Obviously, the ones that you really want to get so motivated, I know that. And, you know, as I was sharing before I started, that was some of the stuff. And I know that the parts around connection with music is so true. And I think as we're thinking, you know, and reflecting on what's happening for us during COVID, and then being able to work out how we can stay connected as community and people. It's interesting. I was thinking about how do we do that through different mediums. So have you seen some of the stuff that I've been able to do through connecting with people? Like, I mean, I know, you know, some of the greatest times I've had is being able to go with friends to listen to a band, or even just sometimes you're sitting somewhere and you're meeting up with someone and there's some music, nice music playing in the background, whether it be a pianist or something. Yeah. Have you seen some stuff that's happening out there remotely at the moment around that kind of connection through music?
Yeah, there definitely. I mean, to start off with, I guess, there are a lot of musicians who are currently, oh, my internet's saying it's unstable. That's okay. Can you still hear me?
All right, yeah.
So there are a lot of musicians who are looking for new and interesting ways to connect with people because they currently don't have work. So instantly, I mean, we've got loads and loads of live streaming going on. It's difficult, I think, to put more than several people together and live stream because of the syncing. You know, so there's always a bit of a delay. So unless you've got people in the one room broadcasting, that's quite hard. But
yeah, yesterday we were trying to sing happy birthday to a colleague yesterday. It didn't work. It was totally out of sync. Yeah. So
but you can also do, you know, you can get, sorry, go on.
No,
you can also get I've got a lag, I think.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, we might, there's some questions that people have been posing.
Okay.
You touched before a bit about the blocks and people who are experiencing auditory hallucinations. A question from someone has been, can you go a bit more into how music can help with visual or visual hallucinations? So I know that there's obviously the research around audio hallucinations. Have you seen anything around visual hallucinations?
No, but I would say that, so my background of mental illness is bipolar 1, so I've kind of experienced a little, you know, a spectrum of a fair few different mood states. So my experience personally, my experience of talking to people is that, again, anxiety heightens everything. So I don't know if there's music that's going to stop you from having the visual hallucination, but you can certainly control how agitated you are by that visual hallucination using music. And I did work with someone who actually had schizoaffective disorder, and we created a little kind of vision board with music, because he said to me that he actually uses music to navigate from a potentially negative psychotic episode into a positive psychotic episode. And that he said for him, he had quite enjoyable psychosis at times, including visual hallucinations, and he was able to access that by kind of using the music to relax himself and feel good, and he turned that kind of negative experience into a positive. So I'm not sure if that answers your question a little bit. Yeah.
So I guess what you're saying, it can be helpful, and I guess what you were talking about before is around people working out for themselves which music is going to be helpful. Some might not find certain music I like appealing, but for them it might be something that really helps them during that time. So I guess what you're saying is it might be just worth trialing and seeing if there's certain
things. And I think it comes down to those 5 categories which I put together, which is the distract, the relax, lift, motivate, and block. And you know, you need to pick your own music to fit each of those things. Obviously there's no one music that's going to work for everybody. Different genres work for different people, you know, to a greater or less degree. So yeah, you've got a bit of trial and error, but basically if you're trying to go down, you need slow, and if you're trying to go up, you want fast. Is one of the basic.
And sometimes I find that it's worthwhile for us to journal or work out ways of remembering those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
My memory is pretty shot at the best of times, but being able to remember, I know especially for when my girls were little babies and knowing what was happening for them, and I couldn't, you know, you go through all this stress, but if it's about having a list or knowing that these are certain songs that when you're feeling down or when you're experiencing an auditory hallucination or something like that, it might be worthwhile when you're in a good state just to be able to note that down and know that these are the tracks that help me then. Well, don't go near this music because that's really not going to help. Yeah.
And so I think like one of the things that I do advise that people do when they're in, I guess because there's maintenance and there's a kind of acute in terms of like the different mental states that you might be in. When you're feeling good, then get your playlists ready. Put playlists together of songs that make you feel good. Remember, of course, that music memory is extraordinarily powerful. So if you listen to a song and you like it, and you're going to remember everything that you were doing at that point in time, probably. When you then feel agitated, when you are having those hallucinations, you can use that music to actually trigger that memory, and that's going to make you feel good because it brings back that happy place or the happy cake you were eating or the, you know, person you were hanging out with as well. Yeah. So using music in a kind of proactive way to kind of be part of lifestyle management, I think is also very effective, as effective as using it to manage those really acute kind of flare-ups when they happen.
Yeah, and I guess that then goes to saying be aware of those songs around maybe some of those times that there were some situations or trauma that might have happened in your life at that time.
That's an excellent point. There is a whole lot of issues to do with music and trauma, obviously, because songs do trigger memories very, very powerfully. And if it's going to trigger something related to your trauma, you may not even know that it's a trigger. You may be standing there on the corner of the street and the car goes by playing a song, and all of a sudden you start to disassociate. So yeah, be aware of that with music. It is very powerful. It's not always good. And with trauma, if you have some of the sensory symptoms, like you get your ears get a bit too sensitive and your eyes get too sensitive, I personally find as well with that music's not helpful. Silence is probably best. Music is not good for everything all the time. Yeah.
A question someone's got is around, do you have any particular sites, CDs or tracks for the different needs in relation to mental health? Or is it just similar to what you were talking about? Or do you know of kind of places that this person's asking around, there might be some particular type of genres or those type of things, websites that might be helpful?
No, so I've made playlists for all, like relaxing playlists, uplifting playlists in different genres. So I made them all on Apple iTunes is the problem. I'm not sure if you have access to Apple iTunes or not. You could probably do them on Spotify as well, but I like to choose my own songs. But I'm happy to share those links. If Kathy gives me an address to send them to, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. In terms of, there is people, we want to make sure we do this at the end, Esther, but people are requesting some of the references you're talking about in terms of some of those research. So you might want to put in the chat function a way that they could either go onto your website or an email address or something, whatever you feel comfortable. So I'll get you to do that to make sure you send it out. But one of the questions is around what are your thoughts on people with schizophrenia and worship music? So I guess that's the kind of thing similar to choir music, that kind of stuff. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we actually just we did just run a first study of its kind, I think, around anxiety and music using my Instagram as the kind of sample population. We had 167 people participating. And one of the things that came through very strongly was worship music for people who, when they were suffering acute anxiety, found that very helpful to listen to. So that doesn't surprise me. I think that, quite aside from the melody and the harmony of the song, you've got lyrics as well. So if you believe in the lyrics, that's going to add another dimension to the way it makes you feel. So my thoughts on that are whatever works, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is a bit about that kind of how do we engage personally around that. In that, because you were talking about lyrics, person's asked around if you could make some comments around the power of lyrics. Funny, I've just started, it's bizarre, I'm going to share a bit out there. I've just started getting into Dolly Parton. Now, don't shoot me down if you're not a Dolly fan, but
Dolly's awesome.
Dolly is awesome. And myself and my children started getting into her again. And I thought, gee, I hope even though she's 70, I think she's like 73 or something, I hope she comes out to Australia again. But some of her lyrics, if you really listen to, are very, very powerful. She had a lot of meaning behind them. Even when you look at some of the power she had around even songs like 9 to 5, it had a lot of meaning. But there's a song she wrote about, Light of the Clear Blue Morning, and it's a song that kind of starts off slowly and goes up gradually. I don't know if you've heard it, Esther, but you play it and it really kind of, well, you can start in a really low mood, but it really picks you up, and the words are really beautiful. And it starts by saying, I can see the light of a clear blue morning. I can see the light of a brand new day. I can see the light of a clear blue morning. Everything's going to be all right and everything's going to be okay. And I think, you can play that again and again and it can really lift your spirits. And lyrics are so powerful. So can you give some reflection? I've just given a bit of reflection, but can you give a bit more reflection on what you've looked into around that lyric?
For me, that goes back to the emotive quality of music and the connection that you have with the person who is singing or who's written that piece of music. Certain pieces of music are going to resonate with you because they reflect the way that you're feeling at that point in time. So lyrics are extraordinarily powerful. I think you can evaluate the two things separately, but when you've got a song that combines both that resonate with you, that's going to have a really big impact. There is a reason that certain bands singing about certain topics resonated with particular generations of people, I think. You know, we had grunge in the 90s, we had kind of psychedelic rock in the 70s, we had glam rock in the 80s. It kind of reflects the attitudes of the people at the time. And I know I haven't listened to kind of grunge or metal for a very long time, but during this period of coronavirus, I actually started listening to it again. It was very, very odd. And songs with very depressing lyrics, very intense lyrics, but they didn't make me depressed. They made me feel like I was connecting to somebody. So it's this very kind of odd, this odd thing that you get. But yeah, people talk a lot about the power of lyrics, and they talk about the power of, this is why I think people get very attached to artists, sometimes too attached to artists, because they feel like that artist actually is singing to them and understands them and knows them, because they're reflecting the way that they're thinking.
Yeah, when you were talking about before how music gets us, like it gets me at times, you're talking about that kind of synergy and in a way empathy, and a lot of us and those that are needing support from mental health services are longing for somebody to get them. And I think you're right in the fact that music, they do get me. Oh my God, that song, it's like they just lived my life. And I think that that's some of the things that have been interesting when you're talking about that connection with what service providers can do to link other people into music. And I know us at One Door, we've got a few bands happening around where our members and consumers are able to get involved, and it's been really cool to stand and watch people play who have significant mental illness but are really just loving it. And unfortunately, we were going to have one of those bands play at our face-to-face symposium, but we'll have to get them back hopefully for next year. But it's just it's really powerful, and I think at times we forget this power and think of other things in our recovery, in people's recovery, where it's a really strong connection between wellness and, you know, also that kind of linking. How can service providers think a bit more outside of the square, which has been a real thought for me.
Well, I also think that, and I should have said from the outset, actually, maybe I did, can't remember, that we don't do music therapy at Mostly Mad Music. So we look at the passive affective music, which is listening to music rather than actually creating or composing. There's obviously a huge body of work in the music therapy side of things and mental health. But I think it's very interesting, and even just from monitoring myself, you can tell a lot about the way you're feeling by what music you're listening to. And often you will start to listen to music before you notice that your mood's changed, in my case anyway. So talking to people about what they're listening to, you know, and is it different to normal? And are they listening to things on repeat or binge listening certain things? What kind of music are they listening to? I mean, you don't want to turn it into a, you know, grilling somebody clinically about their music taste, but having that conversation is an interesting, I think, way to access the way somebody is feeling and to kind of to understand what they're going through without them having to actually put it into mental health words, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's definitely something that I monitor now is the way I'm listening to music and what I'm listening to, because it almost always precipitates a change in mood for me if I suddenly start listening to something different.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And it's even just listening to us talking about this, it's made me think about, you touched on it before around how COVID has brought such, you know, a lot of us to take on. And just the simple thing of music, I noticed when we play it at home, there's just an uplift around, you know, people's just getting on with each other, to that have the power. And sometimes these simple things to make a little bit of impact around it. A question that's come up has been around the bass, which I assume is the guitar bass. I'm assuming this person's talking to, because there's also is there a bass of big bass?
It's a double bass, an acoustic.
Yeah. I guess I can start that. Sorry, no, like this.
There's bass, or there's bass.
Yeah. So maybe it is that guitar thing. But how does the bass? So maybe it's whatever that kind of deep sound is, work with our own biorhythms. Are you aware of any?
Ooh, yeah, no, that's a good one. Well, I think that goes back to the entrainment thing as well. which is that, so like when you've got like a bass guitar, it's like something that you get in a bowl when you have meditation, and they do the bowl thing, and it's kind of, it settles everything down. So, I mean, I don't personally have any evidence to support anything I'm saying right now, but it would seem to me that because you're talking about a thick steel string and you pull it a long way and it does a very slow kind of vibration, that you could get a similar effect from that, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
That was a hard question, whoever asked that one.
It's a goodie. It's worth the research.
I'll go research that one.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So with your In Harmony program, have you done some more, I guess, is that still going, or where are you moving with your In Harmony program? Are you hoping that it might go in different places, or what's happening with that?
Well, I can't confirm anything right now, but there's a possibility that it might go somewhere much larger next year.
Okay. Surely you can give us a hint. So in New South Wales or beyond?
So what I would say is I think that the idea of having music because the In Harmony program was run during Mental Health Month. Yeah. And although initially it was about taking music to people experiencing mental illness, it became more, I suppose, open air concerts, or concerts that were designed to bring people together, to be inclusive, and to just go, wow, bam, this is, mental health is important. Music is good for everybody's mental health. Yeah. So that concept, which is that music linked to mental health, is an idea that some large organisations in the arts, I think, have found attractive. But in terms of exactly what's happening next, we're still in the process of discussing all of that.
Okay, so someone's asked about where they could access the program, or is it something that's put on at certain events and those type of things?
No, so the program, potentially the program will be the 10th of October next year, so not for a while. But if you're after people, I mean, it depends on what you're after. If you're saying that you want to be put in contact with someone who plays music of a particular genre and who might want to play music to you, there are lots of artists out there who themselves have mental health issues and who want to play to people to raise awareness about mental health, or just because they want to perform to people and have that connection, because the artist gets the connection as well, playing to someone that, you do, listening to it. So if that's what you're interested in, I can definitely hook you up with some people who would do that.
Oh yeah, you should, to me. Anyway, that's something, because I'd love to support. Yeah, well, I think at our wellness walk, which we've got happening in November this year because of COVID, but last year we had some musicians who themselves are experiencing mental illness. So it's been great to support them and promote them. So very much we want to do that for 2020. So I'll be getting in contact with you after this. So
awesome.
I'd like to get onto that as well.
We do actually have, we're going to do a quick plug for our musicians today. Yeah. Or we can do. Yeah. Or did you want to do that?
Yeah, well, no, that's your call. Why don't you give a bit of a plug for the musos?
Okay, everybody, we are in the interest, but this was not my idea. This was Kathy's idea, and Gus has done all the work. So all I've done is hook them up with some musicians. But we do have an amazing young guy called Tom Southey. What's Tom doing? Oh, can you still hear me? Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Gus is just showing a screen, I think. Yep. Here we go.
Yeah, right. So we have Tom Southey, who playing today, 6:30. Now you can access that through the One Door Facebook page. Is that right, Gus? Well, yep, I'm assuming you can. Yep, yeah. You can access that through the One Door. So he plays indie rock pop. He's done some beautiful voice, beautiful guitarist, really, really cool guy to kind of, if you want a pub vibe tonight, but you can't go to the pub because of isolation, or you don't go to pubs because you don't drink, this is your indoor pub experience. And then we've also got tomorrow night, which is the day before Schizophrenia Awareness Day, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, International Schizophrenia Awareness Day. Yep, that's right.
Sunday, yeah. So we've got Evgeny Yenchev, who is a Romanian pianist, concert pianist, absolutely incredible. So very, very different, obviously, in genre to Tom. Hoping that between the two of them, you'll find one that is something that appeals to you. But they're both doing live streaming concerts. This one is going to be 6 p.m. on the Facebook page, One Door, tomorrow. Yeah, Saturday, 23rd May.
All right. So you just, guys, everybody, you just need to go on to One Door's Facebook page at those times and you'll be able to see it. Gus has posted it on there, so on the chat, so just get on. And there he is, he's out there, he's doing all this stuff. It's just
hey, so people are going to be able to talk to them during the performance as well, Gus, do you know? Oh, sorry, stop it, listen to Gus. It's on mute.
Yes, they will be engaging with the crowd or with the guests. Yes.
So if you guys want to, you know, literally ask requests, they probably will say no, but try just for fun. But yeah, connect to them, do whatever you want. We're trying to make it as interactive as possible so that you get that experience of a live performance without actually being in the room with somebody.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's very good. Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to that. In terms of, there's a couple more questions because we've got a bit more, little bit more time. So we'll hopefully hear a bit more about your Harmony program. But I think you're really talking about this way that communities can come together. It doesn't matter what they're experiencing, but a way being able to be inclusive, which is what we've been doing this week, is trying to raise awareness around mental health and schizophrenia, taking away the stigma. And music is a beautiful way of doing that, because we all walk in, we're all the same, we're there to listen to some most of the time we hope that they're playing well. I must say I've walked out of one concert in my life, but yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, Madonna.
Well, in the first year we ran the concert, we had we did a final concert in Parliament House at the end of the week, and it was really beautiful because we had people from Tierney House. I don't know if Tierney House is attached to St Vincent's Hospital, so basically often people who are without abode and often mental illnesses who are recuperating from having had physical operations in hospital for a couple of weeks. So we had people from there coming. We had Lou's Place, which is the day refuge for women. And we had people from the board of Lou's Place and people who went to Lou's Place sitting together in the front row of the audience. I just thought, this is exactly what I want to do with these concerts. And just giving people the experience of, beautiful classical music as well, which is something a lot of people haven't heard.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, that's brilliant. That's unreal. So there's a question around any comments about the Tibetan monks' chimes and the higher pitch and wave frequencies impacting upon auditory and more general cerebral circuitry and transmission. Wow, that's a big question for the person who posed that. So
is this the same person who asked about the bass string?
I don't know, might have been, so I'm not sure. But I'm
going to have to take that one notice and go back to you. I do know that, the Tibetan bowls that people use, I think it's the entrainment thing again, as I said, because it lowers your heart rate and because of the vibrations and the speed of the beat. But anything beyond that, I would have to go check out. Yeah,
but I think it's also that kind of stuff around that lovely soothing and so that's really cool. So if you've got a website, Facebook, how can people kind of follow?
Facebook I've got. So do you want me to just write? Facebook is just mostly Mad Music again. So the full one is, I would say go to the website, but we're kind of building a new one. It's not very good at the moment.
Okay. You're on Twitter, because I've seen your Twitter.
We are on everything.
You're on everything. Instagram,
Twitter, LinkedIn. What else is there? YouTube.
You're on everything.
I'm all over that social media.
Well, I'm going to say thanks for coming today. I must say it's been a nice way to close off a fabulous week, and I think it's what we all hope that music does, which is soothe our soul. And I think that's the discussion here has definitely got me thinking a lot about, not only for myself personally, but also for the programs that we do at One Door, how we can connect people more through music. And I know there's some great things that are happening out there. And I know for us, how we could support the In Harmony program, please keep in contact with me and we can work with that and come through that. It's been wonderful to, and there's some really cool comments. You rock, Esther is one of them. In there.
I could have seen you. I was just like, I can't see any of you. I don't know where you are, what's going on.
I know. We'll get these comments and questions to you. So it's been really interesting. So I want to thank you for that. As Esther said, we've got these great musicians get on board, support them. I really feel for musos at the moment. They're being really crippled even more by COVID. So we can get
and
behind.
they also have very high levels of depression and anxiety, like 65% of musicians are. So they're already stressed without having the COVID and no job thing going on.
Yeah. I must say we're a Eurovision family. For those of you who we love Eurovision.
It got cancelled.
And it got cancelled. We were very upset in our household. One of the things that I think even is plug for what if we only started becoming Eurovision fans, but the thing that I love about Eurovision, it celebrates diversity and inclusion, and I love it. And it's similar to what you're talking about, Esther. It's that kind of all come in, no matter what you are, you're singing, and people from all walks of life. So we've been really sad we haven't had Eurovision this year, but we'll look forward to it next year. But it's been wonderful to really dialogue around music. For our Schizophrenia Awareness Week e-symposium, as we said, we've got these musos coming up. On Sunday, the CEO for Mental Illness Fellowship of Australia is going to be just closing off the week, but also being able to have some reflections about COVID from a mental health perspective and from that organisation. So if you want to, that's going to be happening on Sunday. We will be getting out all the links to all the recordings that have happened over the week, and we'll send them out to people, or they'll also be on our website. So look out for that. But I want to say thank you to you all. Stay safe. Look after yourselves, and if I can encourage you to get on your playlists and listen, whatever platform you use, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, your old CD and your iPod, get onto those things. So I just encourage you, get into some music and have a good weekend. And from One Door, that's me. So take care, everybody.
Me too.
Bye-bye.
Jolene, Jolene.